Now, if the officer shot him, would he have been wrong? I don't know. Let's get into it.
Ryan Tillman, real talk, it's the truth.
Over Turner for speeding, going 109 miles an hour in a 70-mile-per-hour zone on I-55 near Chenoa. You can see them having a conversation here. The trooper tells Turner he's not going to arrest him, but will give him a ticket and calls for a tow truck since Turner's license is expired. That's when Turner tackles him and tries to get his gun. This initial struggle lasts just under a minute. Niehaus gets hit in the face multiple times and sprayed with his own pepper spray. Eventually, he calls for help, and later, a passerby with a concealed carry permit comes to his aid and points a gun at Turner. Turner tries to escape in the tow truck, but is brought down and is finally arrested. All of this happening before law enforcement backup arrived 7 minutes later. During the encounter, Niehaus asked Turner why he did it and thanks the passerby who helped him.
Wow. So why do I ask the question if the officers would have shot him, would have been wrong? Because we see stuff like this happen all the time. We saw a video probably a few months ago that happened in Michigan where an officer did something similar. He conducted a traffic stop. The guy flees. He's fighting with the officer. The guy grabs the officer's taser, and then the officer shoots him in the head and then kills him. Now, a lot of people were up in arms about why that officer responded the way he did. But the question is it justified or is it not justified? Now, in this situation, luckily, the officer, didn't kill the suspect, and the suspect didn't kill the officer, so everybody went home at the end of the day. So that's the good news. But the question becomes, what is right for the officer to do in a scenario like this? Now, this officer got tackled. He had his pepper spray taken from him, used on him, and then the guy, I don't know if you guys caught that in the video, the suspect tried to go for the officer's gun. Now, this is showing me that a suspect has clear intentions of harming the police officer, which is crazy. Now, there's a lot of things that were happening in this situation. I will say, and again, this is not a Monday morning quarterback, but this is one of the reasons. I just did a video recently about this. It was about why officers cannot drop their guard. Did the officer drop his guard in here? Maybe a little bit. Maybe, because it was, in his mind, hey, look, I'm going to give this guy a warning. I pulled him over, not that big a deal, and I'm going to let him go on his way. And there are times where, and I've been guilty of this myself, so I'm not just saying this is somebody that's from the sideline. I've been guilty of this myself where I'm like, oh, this traffic stop seems to be going good. Let me go ahead and drop my guard just a little bit. But it's in those times where we drop our guard where we get hurt. And so if you're the civilian watching this, realize that there's a reason why police officers should not drop their guard when they're doing a traffic stop, because they don't know who you are. Now, if you're the officer watching this, there's a reason why we can't get complacent and drop our guard, even if it seems like everything else is going well. Now, I say that the caveat to this is that you can always be respectful, you can always be kind to people, but in the back of your mind, you should always have a plan to respond to the threat the moment it presents itself. Now, what I want to do, I want to go back to the video, and I want to talk about some of the indicators that we see in this video that might tell you that the officer or that the suspect wants to do something else to this officer. Let's watch the video, and I'm going to slow it down for you.
Here, the trooper tells Turner he's not going to arrest him, but will give him a ticket and calls for a tow truck.
Now, I've been involved in some fights before in my life, when I was in college, when I was in high school. And during that experience, if I was the guy that was going to throw the first punch, which there was a time where I was the guy that threw a first punch, for whatever reason, didn't even realize it, one of the things I did is I kind of looked around, put my head back, because I'm thinking, I'm preparing myself, I'm hyping myself up internally like, hey, you got to strike first. And so when you look at this situation, this guy has that little 1,000-mile stare, just looking off into the distance, preparing himself, looking around. In his mind, he's either thinking about either A, I'm going to run from this officer, or B, I'm going to go ahead and strike this officer. But these are things that we as officers have to pick up on. Let's continue to watch.
Since Turner's license is expired, that's when Turner...
Right there. Look at that. See how he did the head nod? And I've done that before. I've also seen people do it to me. When I got in a fight when I was younger, one of the things that the guy did to me was he kind of looked away, and the next thing I know, we were fighting it out. So these are things, these are indicators, pre-incident indicators that we see that kind of give us clues that, hey, look, something ain't right here. This guy is trying to do something. These are things that we have to pick up on in order to have the advantage. I just recently did a course where we're talking about pre-incident indicators. And I used to be a football player in college. I've told you guys that before. And as a corner, a defensive back, I was always at the disadvantage because the receiver and the quarterback are the only ones on the field that knew where the ball was going to go. As a defensive back, you don't have that luxury. The only way I was able to stay on top of that receiver and try to make better plays on the ball was to look at indicators that kind of told me what he was trying to do. So I will look at where he was running. I will look at his mouth. I will look at his eyes. I will look at his hips. Things like that that would tell me, hey, the ball's in the air or this is the route he's about to run. It's no different in law enforcement. We have to be able to see some of these pre-incident indicators in order to respond to the threat. Let me continue one more time. Now, this right here, this position is a very, very dangerous position to be in as an officer. I told you I've wrote a little bit of jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. If a person is able to get you in this position, it is very, very scary and not a good place to be because there's not a lot that you can do. Now, if you train jiu-jitsu, you wouldn't panic. You would just say, okay, cool, this is what I have to do next. Maybe I kind of go ahead and, put them in an armbar, whatever it is, but you kind of figure the situation out. But I'm telling you now, this is not a very, very good place to be at. And so the question becomes is, as officers, at what point do you feel like you need to respond with a level of, deadly force if you ever go on the ground and the guy starts reaching for your gun or he starts to reach for your taser or your pepper spray? Now, again, I asked the civilians the questions, is would the officer have been wrong? Would he have been wrong if he pulled out his gun in this scenario? I don't know. But this is why it's important for us as officers to train, do jiu-jitsu. So if you ever get put in a position like this, you kind of know how to respond to it. But it's also equally important that if you're the civilian watching this, the guy that he pulled over, he is the one that would have put himself in this situation had something gone south and an officer decided to use deadly force. He's the one that put himself in that position. We can't forget about that. If a person decides to fight an officer, tackle an officer, ambush an officer, they're the ones responsible if they lose their life simply because they had the ability to control their own actions. So with that being said, I want to hear what you guys have to think about this video. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave some comments below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks again, and God bless.
Ron Tillman, real talk, it's the truth.